keeping consciousness and this unspoken collective awareness that our collective decision-making apparatuses are irredeemably broken. We don't do much better in smaller organizations where collective decision-making happens. In the corporate world, for instance, collective decision-making is generally a function of straight up power. Who has the power to make the decision makes the decision, and how that power is accumulated generally goes to the person who is believed to be able to maximize the profits of the organization, irrespective of the damage done to the employees, let alone the wider community, let alone the world at large. We all sense that this is broken. And what you get on the left, where I tend to hang out, is a lot of theorizing and occasional practicing of something called participatory democracy. So participatory democracy is when everyone who is relevant to a decision has a direct voice in the decision itself.
Direct voice.
That's a simple way of understanding participatory democracy. There are periodic movements of participatory democracy that come and go. One movement centered around participatory democracy that I was a big fan of and a big part of was Occupy Wall Street 10 years ago. And Occupy Wall Street was a radical attempt to organize society, first the little society of Occupy, but with the dream of organizing the larger society of America and indeed the world around the idea of participatory democracy. I'll pause there because that's a lot and see how all this is landing before I go further. And I'm somewhat self-conscious at the density of these ideas. So please help me lighten them up if need be, or whatever you think.
Yeah, I think you're doing a great job of explaining all this. And I'm imagining right now that most folks listening are familiar with a lot of the topics that you're exploring. They're topics that, I've explored in numerous conversations on this podcast. And, just to add, I didn't know that you were part of Occupy. I was also part of Occupy. Were you in New York City?
I was.
What working group were you in?
The media working group. Primarily.
Oh, cool. I was in facilitation and info.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I was there for like
8 months. It was a media working
Yeah.
group. That makes sense.
I was there for 6 or 8 months too. I mean, I was all in.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, I moved to New York City to be a part of it. Yeah, I was sleeping on the square and everything. Yeah.
Oh, well, I since I was living in New York City and a little too privileged, I didn't sleep in the square except for one night. But I went 4 or 5 days a week and spent many an hour there.
It's an incredible. Was seated there, and so I'm appreciating your presencing of that movement and its relevance to the conversation that we're having now. But I think you're doing a great job. There's actually nothing that I would add or change to what you're saying. I think you're right on the money, and I just wholeheartedly agree with your framing.
Yay. And we're about to get into facilitation and Occupy Wall Street, which was not my working group. For those who don't know, I'm delighted to share with you that Occupy Wall Street was organized along working groups. And there were, I don't know, this is a rough guess, don't hold me to it, anyone. I'm going to go with 20 or so working groups. And the working groups would just be whatever people were most drawn to doing. So Daniel spent his energy in facilitation. I spent my energy in media. Other working groups would be like kitchen or medical or direct action. Direct action were the group of people who planned the marches or the protests or any action. Sanitation, you get the idea. So basically it was a self-organizing society where people naturally, and I would say beautifully for the most part, gravitated to what they were most passionate about. And it was, for both of us, I'm gathering, one of the formative experiences of our lives.
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah, and it was my political awakening.
Mhm.
What I didn't even
Define
know was
political
possible
awakening,
until I
David.
saw it at Occupy Wall Street was that a group of people could come together with different needs and perspectives and spend the time to share what's inside them and to listen to what's inside others until an agreement is reached by all of them that feels genuinely good and serves the greatest good both of the community there and the.
I honestly like a lot this magazine.
I did not even know that was possible.
Yeah.
And I would wager that unless you see it with your own eyes and feel it with your own body, you can't really know that it's possible. And it is so different than democracy in the sense that we're used to thinking about it, where you gather people together and usually there's two sides, they fight about it. One side wins the argument, rarely on the basis of the quality of their arguments, usually on the basis of their charisma or their leverage. And then there's a vote. The majority takes the power and the minority sucks it up embittered, plotting to win later.
Right.
Yes. Yeah.
This system that I just described, democracy, blows.
Yeah. Forrest Landry described it as this kind of the system we have is the perfect technology to divide a population in two and polarize them.
Yes.
And you know, to your point about Occupy and the choice making processes that were present there, that was one of the things that drew me in, that made me fall in love with that whole movement. Was I remember attending a kind of workshop, Intro to Consensus Decision Making, which was one of the main decision making processes that we did there, and just falling so deeply in love with this mode of being together, whereby you kind of hear from the concerns of the group and do this creative work to integrate the concerns in order to make a choice that meets the needs of everybody that's present, which, you know, we kind of intuitively do with small groups like your friends, but doing it on the level of, 100 or in some cases 1,000 people when we're making decisions at the General Assembly, the whole group choice making space was incredible. It was an incredible work. I remember just being so much work to do that, but beautiful work, meaningful work. And so, yeah, I'm right there with you in terms of the beauty and the profundity and the deep significance of that aspect of what we were doing together.
Yeah. Sounds like we have both come out of that experience holding something in our hearts. And I don't know about you, but it's been pretty uncomfortable to engage with politics in any on the ground way that isn't connected to the truth of what we saw there.
Yeah.
I used to be more conventional, like, if you think about even on the left, even on the far left, even on not the far left, but the acceptable far left, let's call it the Bernie Sanders left or something like it. Mm-hmm. We're still in the broken paradigm of convincing people you're right, amassing power for leverage, and getting what you want done in spite of the people who disagree with you. We're still in that model.
Yes.
And there has not yet entered into the political mainstream even the idea that there's another way of doing it.
Yeah, that was, somebody framed it subsequently. I forgot, it might have been Nathan Schneider, who framed it as like a prototyping of a new kind of political operating system. That's in a way what you can understand.
You know what's new political operating system? I'll tell you.
The thing that we would then use as a new way of organizing our society, which is what it felt like, getting food every day, people taking care of sanitation, people taking care of each other, making choices together. And I will add, though, and maybe you'll get to this, as somebody in the facilitation working group, making consensus decisions with multiple hundreds of people was didn't work very well at the end. It actually didn't go so well. And so in a sense, I got quite traumatized by that experience, trying to do consensus decision making with that many people, and being a part of a movement that really, really valued inclusivity. That was, I think, one of the tensions that ended up vibrating Occupy out of existence.
I agree. And I wonder if we share the same analysis of why it, quote unquote, ultimately didn't work. My analysis right now is that there's something rigid around consensus decision making, and there was something rigid around the inclusivity.
Mm-hmm.
So if your intention is to get to a decision that everyone consensus upon, you are oriented around what people say, you're oriented around external forms of communication, and you are stuck with the will of whoever happens to show up. And you're also stuck abiding by rules that inevitably will be undermined by people who intend to undermine things.
Yes. Yeah.
So one conventional problem that Occupy ran into was, for instance, the biggest veto power you could exercise as a member of Occupy Wall Street was a hard block where you would cross your arms, and basically you're saying through this hard block that if this goes through, you would leave the movement. And what there wasn't was clarity around whose hard block mattered and whose hard block didn't, and how much time to spend with people who hard blocked. And there was a massive difference between a white man hard blocking and a black woman hard blocking, and there was very little deep thought about the intentions of that white man or that black woman, and it just collapsed into a stew of unprocessed racial fears, dogmatism, and I would just say general immaturity.
Yeah, I want to share just a quick story, and then I want to spend more time just getting your whole vision so we can talk once that's all kind of constructed. But as a member of the facilitation working group, we were very aware of this vulnerability in the consensus making process. Essentially that there could be agents who weren't on the side of the occupation of Occupy, who had bad intentions, bad faith actors who could use blocks to, disable the movement. And so I took it upon myself, foolishly, naively, to attempt to create a process by which you could exclude people from the movement. And
amazing, you're my guy.
Not a job for a white man, my friend.
Yeah. Many ways in which it was foolish, naive. But I remember this is the kind of beginning of the end of Occupy for me was holding the initial meeting to try to solicit perspectives on how to craft this proposal, and who showed up was everybody that we suspected.
Look at all
was
these emails.
Who just completely tore it apart, disabled it, made it completely impossible for me to move forward. And I remember something in my heart actually broke that day with regards to Occupy. I started falling out of love with it. I started getting burned out. And so, as you're speaking, there's a lot of emotional activation, a lot of memories happening in me of just like, that what you're speaking of was very real for me. It was very present in my life almost every day.
Well, I think it was a fatal flaw, and there was no winning. There was no way to come up with a solution to people exploiting the rules that had already been agreed upon to undermine the movement. There was no winning.
Yep.
So no matter how you tried to hold that meeting, it was hopeless. And if you didn't hold that meeting, it was hopeless. And that is because ultimately no fixed rule will survive somebody who is smart and determined to bring you down. Dogma will always destroy things. And that is the problem, I think, with Occupy Wall Street. And obviously, we're both coming from a lot of love and a lot of just like admiration for the facilitators, especially who were breaking new ground as far as you could tell. There's a history of participatory democracy
Right.
and all of that, but for most of the facilitators, it was new ground you were breaking. And, you know, so, but my God, we need experiments and they're going to fail and we need to learn from
This is
them.
a
So
good
isn't so much
positioning,
of a
David.
critique
Very
as
well
an
done.
appreciation of what we were able to learn from that. And what I'm learning from that right now, it took me 10 years to get clear on the message, but what I'm learning from that
I'm
right
gonna
now
need
is
her,
that
right?
consensus is not the right goal. Consensus is not the right goal. And I want to posit what is the right goal. The right goal is not consensus.
Coherence.
The right goal is resonance.
Resonance.
The right goal is a
Gabriel.
collective experience of the
Marlene,
truth.
I wonder if you're still in there. So we're gonna
What
remove you. Director better be
The
there.
problem with that is that it appears, at least to people untrained, as subjective and elitist. And it raises the question of who gets to decide what is true then, and are we not just replicating blah, 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 blah. But I am of the belief now that there are enough of us who are committing to embodying, or at least first allowing, listening to, and then embodying the truth of what wants to emerge through a group, that we can hold the proper resonance that allows for the right decision. And the right decision is not one that everyone consensus upon, even though I think when it's felt, it will be largely consensus upon. But the right decision is the one that resonates through a group of people and feels like the truth. And when consensus-driven decision-making works, it works because it's doing this. And Occupy had a big spiritual blind spot. Spirituality at Occupy Wall Street was a drum circle. And facilitation was the center. But the point of facilitation is not to get everyone to agree. The point of facilitation ultimately is to allow for the collective intelligence to emerge. The facilitators are not supposed to be mere mediators trying to balance everyone's needs. The facilitators are more like, hold this word lightly, but I think at best, more like priests. Not in the sense that they have the authority of God, but in the sense that their job, like the best priest, is to connect you with your own openness to God, your own spark of divinity, your own receptiveness,
Best
or to
priest.
prepare the space for the emergence of the divine intelligence.
Higher mind.
I cannot imagine a better way of making decisions. I think this is the gold standard of collective decision making. It doesn't mean that we will often be able to reach it, but I find that it's meaningful and powerful to put language to it.
Так
And
ти я
it
передаш
sits
голосом
very
до
comfortably at
Латера,
the
я know
intersection
David.
of what,
Put language to it.
I don't like this word in this context, but I got no better one, what modern spirituality is starting to tell us around embodiment, and what anarchist political thought is trying to tell us around participatory democracy. It also aligns with what I imagine have been the containers for collective decision making throughout history. You gather people who are capable of listening together around a fire, and you sit for days or weeks or however long it takes until the divine speaks through the group. I don't think that that is a new idea. That is an idea that is likely found among cultures all over the world. It is one
we're
that we
back
have
here, huh?
been, I guess, incapable or at least reluctant to adopt in our modern world. But I think now, with our understanding of participatory democracy and the edge of
You know what I
spiritual
want? I want to see you design weeks around the world. I want to see a simple page with all the visuals, and I click into the visual and I get the words design, week, easy, design, offer,
that the future of collective
a
decision
must.
making, or even the future of politics, is the creation of sacred containers for emergence with clear and clean intentions.
Clear and clean.
And emergence, in the broadest sense, I'm using the word
Where are the
emergence
visuals
to
you
mean
design week?
what happens without force, what arises without force, what arises naturally.
Okay.
So what is arising
with
through the
each.
group naturally without force. And then what I mean by sacred is, I mean, a conscious attitude of attuning to a higher intelligence. We're not just pretending that what you think and what you think and what you think are all equal. That is an old, dead, and boring paradigm that causes a lot of frustration and confusion in left-leaning circles. But we're also not going to privilege people based on money, power, status, and race. That's an even older and dumber paradigm. But we're going to have to start acknowledging that some of us are more equipped to listen and tune in to what wants to emerge through the collective than others of us. And those people who are most attuned to what wants to emerge and most adept at organizing a group such that it emerges are going to be known as facilitators.
Yeah.
And what I mean by clear intention is that when you gather a group together, if you don't have a clear intention of what you need to understand or decide, then whatever ambiguity is in there will corrupt the container. It could be something trivial. Us five here are now here to decide on where we are going to dinner. That is our intention here.
This is the best
And
thing
if that
you
intention
can
is
ever
held with
invest
clarity,
in.
then more likely than not, even with a mediocre facilitator, we'll find the right answer. But if the unnamed intention is to placate the person who we all imagine is going to be paying, then you've got a corruption in the intention, which will corrupt the process, which will corrupt the decision. And the last word I had there is clear,
Didn't
clean.
know it's water
clean.
repellent.
Clean means that you are genuinely trying to bring down or allow to bubble up the collective intelligence. The facilitator does not have some hidden other agenda. And once we get clear on this, and I'm not a big fan of my language here, this is how it's coming out of me. But once we get clear that the future of collective decision making or the future of politics is the creation of sacred containers for emergence with clear and clean intentions, once we get clear on that and put that in language that people can get, this is really crappy propaganda I'm sharing right now. This is just good descriptions of what's happening under the hood. I'm not saying we should put this in a meme yet. But once we get good at explaining this and good at showing it, I think it will be clear enough to more and more people that this is how decisions must be made. This is decision making itself. So if we get clear that this kind of container is how we make the right decisions, then in any container or in any organization or in any political system that comes into contact with this healthy way of making decisions, the people in that political process will be faced with the decision of whether they want to move toward healthy and wholesome and authentic and like spiritually alive decision-making processes, or if they want to stay
Videos?
in
How about
the
photos?
delusion of representative democracy, or in the
Notes.
toxicity of pure power-based politics. We haven't yet had a new meme to pull people into new forms of decision making. You can't go around the world and tell people, trust me, democracy works, and then point to America or France. That's a farce. If I were a tyrant anywhere in the world, I would say, "Are you sure?" to my people, and my people would say, "You know what? You're right." So we need a new coherent decision-making process that we can point to as something to aspire to, and this is my offering for what that is. It might take 10 years or 20 years or 50 years before
Come on,
it clicks,
Taco, you can
but
do better. Let's do
I'm
more.
pretty sure this is what it is.
The first thing I want to share is that when you said that the right goal is resonance, my whole body tingled.
Good times.
Right. And I felt like this sense of clear alignment, which we might call resonance. And so that seems like the most significant thing that happened on my side. I mean, it feels like you're speaking with more clarity, a lot of sensing that I've been doing. And, maybe we can save this for later, but, that like a lot of my work is preparing people to be appropriate instruments for that kind of truth seeking or truth resonating, that kind of collective harmonizing that I sense is possible and that I've had experiences of, in these sorts of spaces at the edge of our culture. And so I think that the main thing I want to respond with is just, yeah, I'm with you in a deep way. Yeah.
Well, that feels really good. And in a way, we're doing our jobs here at the level of the soul that we tried out at Occupy Wall Street, which is if your work is to help people become clear vessels for emergence and resonance, that is the job of the facilitator in the world I'm describing. And that does not feel like my job. My job is to propagandize or share what people need to get so that I can draw them in to this world, and then you can help center them.
I love it. You're still in the media working group, and I'm still in the facilitation working group. Yeah,
exactly. That's what I'm saying. Yeah, we're doing our jobs.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. I'm glad it's resonating. Maybe I'll say more about resonance. The question that resonance is the answer to is, how do we know what the right thing is? How do we know what the best decision is? And unless you have resonance as the guide, you're left with a bunch of really crappy answers, like voting
6 years ago,
or even like consensus. Resonance transcends consensus. The problem with resonance is that a lot of people are liable to confuse resonance with something like satisfaction.
We'll come back to you, David. Where is that? Where is it? Why does it always happen? Here we go.
Don't blow the whistle.
Dreamy Smart is the power management tool, which means turning your phone on or off without you knowing. Cozy Smart is the hot miking tool. So for example, if it's in your pocket, they can turn the microphone on and listen to everything that's going on around you, even if your phone's switched off, because they've got the other tools for turning it on. That's a geolocation tool which allows them to follow you with a greater precision than you would get from the typical triangulation of cell phone tower. They want to own the phone instead of you.
Pretty clear. What else do we need to know? 6G, the future. Oh, 3 years ago. Which one I want to see. Ago. That's the thing. I don't want to see anything from 4 years ago. I want to see something from now.
"6G technology, or sixth generation wireless technology, is the successor to 5G cellular technology. 6G networks are going to be a more advanced frequency, higher capacity, and far lower quiescence than the 5G technology. The technology now is in early stages of rollout and is available in select few countries. Predicted to be groundbreaking, the 6G technology will have us doing things way faster and differently. Hello everyone, welcome to another exciting video from our channel. In this video today, we take you through everything we know so far about the 6G technology. But before we do, please subscribe to our channel for more such videos. That said, let's begin. One among the pretensions of 6G internet is going to be to support 1 second quiescence communication. This is times faster, or 1/1000th the quiescence, than 1 millisecond outturn. The 6G technology request is expected to grease large advancements in imaging, presence technology, and point mindfulness. Working in confluence with AI, the computational structure of 6G will autonomously determine the simplest position for calculating to do. This includes opinions about data storehouse, processing, and sharing. What are the benefits of 6G over 5G? 6G is predicted to support data rates of 1 terabyte per second. Access points are going to be ready to serve multiple guests contemporaneously via orthogonal frequency division multiple access. This precision of capacity and quiescence will extend the performance of 5G operations and expand the compass of capabilities to support innovative operations in wireless connectivity, cognition, seeing, and imaging. 6G's advanced frequently will enable important faster slice rates, also to furnish significantly better outturn and better data rates. The admixture of sub-mm swells and frequency selectivity to work out relative electromagnetic immersion rates could potentially beget significant advances in wireless seeing technology. How will 6G work? It's anticipated that 6G wireless seeing results will widely use different frequentness to live immersion and acclimate frequentness consequently. This system is doable because titles and modes emit and absorb electromagnetic surge at characteristic frequentness, and thus the emigration and immersion frequentness are unoriginal for any given substance. Do we really need 6G? The sixth generation of cellular networks will integrate a group of preliminary distant technologies, including deep literacy and large data analytics. The preface of 5G has paved the way for the importance of this confluence. The need to emplace edge computing to make sure overall outturn and low quiescence for ultra-reliable, low quiescence dispatches results is a pivotal motorist of 6G. The necessity to support machine-to-machine communication within the Internet of Effects, or IoT, is also a drive. Likewise, a robust relationship has been linked between 6G and high-performance computing, or HPC. While edge computing coffers will handle a number of the IoT and mobile device data, much of it will bear further centralized HPC coffers to try to do the processing. For example, some business guests might want an admixture of on-domain RAN with Mongrel on-domain and hosted computing for edge and core computing independently, and data center hosted core network rudiments for particular business networks or indispensable service providers. 6G radio networks will give the communication and data gathering necessary to accumulate information. Still, a systems approach is needed for the 6G technology request. It will include data analytics, AI, and coming generation calculation capabilities using HPC and amount computing. Here are some important aspects of the 6th generation wireless communication technology. High advance rate. 5G is predicted to deliver 20 gigabytes per second peak rate and 100 Mbps donor educated rate, but 6G will deliver a peak rate of 1000 Gbps. Likewise, it'll increase the donor
Stupid
educated
clothing
rate
that
to
is.
1 Gbps. Hence,
I
the
understand
spectral
it's
effectiveness of
secondhand, but it
6G
looks so
is going to
shitty.
be relatively 2 times above that of 5G. The better spectral effectiveness will enable an outsized number of juggies to peers advanced multimedia services incontinently and contemporaneously. The network drivers got to revamp their being structured to support the increased spectral effectiveness. Network trustability and delicacy. 6G will beat 5G within the orders of network content and network trustability. 5G supports the veritably stylish speed of mobile bias at 500 kilometers per hour, but 6G will increase the speed of mobile bias to 10 bias per square kilometer.
But we don't need
The better connection
faster.
viscosity
I don't
will
need
make an
faster
outsized
internet.
number of connected bias interact with one another in real time. Also,
Connect me
6G will
telepathically
optimize
and we're
M2M
fine.
commerce by perfecting network trustability relatively 100 times and reducing the error rate by 10 times. Emphasis on energy effectiveness. 6G will enable end druggies to pierce a spread of high-end services seamlessly and incontinently in real time. But the end, druggies will need to bias with important batteries to pierce the high-end services with non-detention or dislocations. 6G aims to enhance the battery continuance of bias by double. At an original time, the technology will contribute towards environmental sustainability by making the network perform optimally without consuming redundant energy. 6G aims to support the energy effectiveness of the telecom network by 2 times as compared to 5G. Do you think the 6G technology will make a big difference? Share your thoughts with us in the comments below. And thanks
I think
for
it will
watching this
kill
video.
us all.
If you enjoyed it, please like, share, and subscribe to
Okay.
the channel for more such exciting content and further updates. See you in the next one.
See you. Never.
Yes.
or pleasure, or it feels right to me. But there is, for those of us who have done sufficient work on ourselves, a relatively easy distinction to make between
What is
this is what I
sufficient
want
work on
and this is what
ourselves?
feels genuinely true. And if you're not ready to make a distinction between this is what I want and this is what feels genuinely true, you are not yet in a position to contribute in a meaningful way to collective decision making.
How would you support somebody in making that distinction in their own experience?
I think most of us have some examples where we're able to feel both, even in retrospect. So you might say like,
Oh,
I
that's
really
gonna be
wanted
fun.
it, and then I got it, and then I realized that maybe I shouldn't have eaten the pint of ice cream
Can you imagine?
because now I feel sick, and I
Could
kind
open
of
it all.
knew that before I got the ice cream. I could feel that it wasn't the right thing. So